She doesn't know how to use the barbecue pit, so she can't eat without it.
All right.
She's afraid to start a fire.
For those of you who weren't signed in to our previous presentation, my name is Mr. Smith. I'm the senior thesis teacher here at Annapolis Christian Academy, and you're about to watch Maya Liefer and the culmination of her rhetoric and logic training here at Annapolis Christian Academy as she presents the findings of a large amount of research that she spent the entire semester doing on a topic that was near and dear to her heart, where she asked the question, is screen time ruining the development of your child? And her interest in that seems to have come from her experience babysitting. And I'm happy to introduce her today. She is our valedictorian. She was the MVP of the senior varsity volleyball team, and she plans to major in business at Texas A&M University. So we're very proud of Maya here at Annapolis Christian Academy, and we're also very, very excited to hear what she has to say today. Thank you, Maya.
Good afternoon. Have you been in a store or perhaps at somebody's house and witnessed a 2-year-old swiping away at a book, trying to type on a toy, or maybe even using the remote as a phone? And if so, what does this tell you about what the child is taking note of most in its young life? Over the last couple of years, I have spent a lot of time babysitting young children. They are all so different, and I have often wondered how different lifestyles have affected them. For instance, will the one who uses more technology be able to do more or less with the skills gained from it than the child who isn't allowed screen time at all? In a day and age where we have screens with us 24/7, I think it is important to ask ourselves, what is it doing to benefit the minds of young children? Is it helping them with their everyday life, their social skills? Is it teaching them how to be more studious? Is it helping them draw near to our God? And if not, then what is it doing for them? As it turns out, I'm not the only one asking these questions. Screens and the amount of time spent on them have been a hot topic these days, especially with so many children having to learn online during the COVID-19 outbreak. Opinions differ on the screen time subject. Some people suggest that 2 hours of screen time is all a child should have per day. Others suggest that the limit on screen time is just another way for the world to try and not give mothers a break. Another group of people also suggest that children who are kept away from screens will be too far behind their peers to catch up. So which one is correct? Can screen time be beneficial to children? The answer I have found is that children between the ages of 0 and 5 should have no more than 1 hour of screen time per day. I came to this conclusion through 4 pathways, which I will share with you as arguments throughout my speech. The first one I like to call the critical development argument. The second is screens don't develop social skills argument, the learning in person argument, and lastly, the high screen time, low health argument. Before we move on, let's define some terms. Screen time will be defined as any time spent in front of a screen, such as a tablet, phone, or television. Another term is the term children. For today, anytime I use the word children, students, or kids, I will simply just be referring to kids ages 5 and below. Children develop a lot during the small window of time between 0 and 5 years old. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, or AAP, before a child is even 1 year of age, he should be able to recognize different types of emotions, recognize people's faces, and start to develop some fine motor skills, such as switching objects from one hand to another without dropping them. Your child begins to develop all of these things before the age of 1, so it is important that they are given the opportunity to do so. By allowing a child to roam around on the floor with his or her toys, it allows him to begin to develop his fine motor skills and curiosity. By putting a child in front of a screen instead of giving him free rein of the floor, it allows for an interruption in the development of a child's curiosity and motor skills. At this age, children begin to recognize even the slightest social cues. By being around adults and other children, a child is exposed to different types of social interactions. But if a child is just placed in front of a screen, they are not given the chance to develop these sorts of skills. After the age of 1, a child should be capable of mimicking their parents, such as repeating their same mannerisms, words, or even phrases. Children learn best from their parents and will develop more and more skills as they watch their parents. When children are put in front of a screen, instead of being able to spend time with their parents, they're missing out on key developmental stages. In a book written by Neil Postman, he gives us a great quote that makes us really think about what technology is doing to us. It reads, "Anyone who is even slightly familiar with the history of communications knows that every new technology for thinking involves a trade-off. It giveth and taketh away, although not quite in equal measure. Every time we advance with new technology, something old is being taken away with it. For example, with the invention of Google, there was no longer a point to memorize any sort of facts because you could simply just search it up. Similar things are happening with children's shows and parent-child interactions. As more and more informative children's shows like Bubble Guppies and Sesame Street get added to this world, less and less of the parent-child interaction seems to be needed. But this is not an equal trade-off. The interaction between a child and a screen does not even remotely have the same benefits as an interaction between a parent and a child. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no more than 2 hours a day or 14 hours a week. After going through all of the evidence, I would argue that kids should spend 7 hours or less in front of a screen during the week. This 7 hours a week still allows for kids to spend plenty of time watching a show or movie while still getting the one-on-one human interaction that is so desperately needed at such a young age. Parents should limit their child's screen time because screen time does not allow for the child to build good and healthy relationships. Let's say that your child does nothing but watch TV all day long. Whom are they talking to? With whom are they interacting with? What kind of relationships are they building? The truth is, just because they are watching cartoon characters have a good relationship on TV doesn't mean that they are actually learning how to have a good relationship themselves. The development of children from the time of birth to age 5 is extremely important and can be the basis of all of their social skills. In a study done by a group of child psychologists and counselors at the Institut de la Statistique du Québec in Quebec, Canada, they looked into how television exposure of young children influenced their academic, psychosocial, and lifestyle characteristics. While looking into several other factors, the doctors and mental health professionals also noted the social aspects of the children once they hit the 4th grade. The scientists looked into the emotional distress, reactive aggression, and victimization factors of peer rejection experiences. They found that children who spent more time watching television in those early childhood years were less likely to be involved in critical social lessons. The study states that, taken in context, our results suggest that reduced time for critical social interactions in early childhood, owing to displaced time spent watching television, may present later specific risks of developing inadequate social skills. Children who spend more time on screens are less likely to be involved in social interactions that may involve rejection and/or other vital social interactions. If children do not learn how to deal with these types of interactions at a young age, they may never be able to deal with them in a healthy way. Children who are given the chance to learn about the social world through playdates or other social meetings are faced with what to do when challenged with adversity, such as another kid taking the toy they were playing with. If the children are just placed in front of a screen, they are not developing social skills such as sharing, listening, and respecting the boundaries of other children. Children have been able to learn about and understand how to maintain healthy relationships at a young age. The older the child gets, the harder it will be for the child to learn these important concepts. The main way that children learn these concepts is from their parents. And if all their parents do is just sit them in front of a screen, they're not learning much about social interactions. Also, in Deuteronomy 6, 7, and 8, parents are called to share the commandments of the Lord with their children. The The Lord is calling the parents of any and every child to walk alongside them with their walk with Christ. In order to do this, the child has to be able to view what a strong relationship with Christ looks like, and they will not be learning anything from their parent if all they do is sit them in front of the screen. A child learns more in person than they could ever learn from a screen. As tablets and phones become more affordable, schools, even preschools, are trying to move more towards learning online. Now, this can have some pros for older children, such as our solar level, but more cons for our pre-K levels. In my research, I found results from a study done that supports the idea that children learn better from live, in-person lessons versus videos. Even after a 24-hour delay, 12 to 15-month-olds have little difficulty imitating the live demonstrations, but they are quite poor at imitating the video demonstrations. The children in this study were able to follow multi-step demonstrations after just one live one. But children who were given a video to watch struggled even with just a one-step demonstration. It wasn't until the kids had watched the video 6 times that the kids had some sort of success. There were several other experiments like this with similar results. Though the culture of learning in America is relying more and more on computer technology, it doesn't mean that that is what is best for the children. The children of today still learn better from books and teachers who are in the same room as them, rather than a screen. Screens can also impede the reading abilities of a child. Children who are spending more time in front of screens are spending less and less time reading. These days, when children get bored, or when parents try to enforce quiet time in the house, it involves some sort of screen. This is taking more and more time away from the books children could be reading. The majority of the brain development happens from birth to age 5, so theoretically, children can learn how to read before they get to kindergarten. But nowadays, these things aren't happening because children are using their free time to watch instead of read. Too much screen time can negatively affect the health of children. Large amounts of screen time have been linked to things such as obesity, anger issues, lower patience levels, bad sleep habits, and other negative effects. The first one I would like to touch on is how much screen time can affect the sleep behaviors of a child. The light that is emitted from any screen can cause the brain to think that the sun is out, meaning that it is not time to sleep. Heavy screen time before a child is put to bed can lead to a shorter duration of sleep and even uneasy sleep. Lack of sleep can be detrimental to a young child. In fact, it can cause growth problems with the child's brain and body. The next health problem I would like to talk about is how television can affect the obesity of a child. Now, you would think that the obesity levels are higher in children who watch more TV because they don't participate in enough physical activity. That may be true in some cases, but more often than not, the obesity levels are high in children who watch more television because of the food they are exposed to during the commercial portion of whatever they are watching. In the book, Into the Minds of Babes, I was informed of a meeting hosted by the Society for Research in Child Development, in which Cynthia Sheep, director of a media literacy program at Ithaca College, put together a food pyramid. This pyramid was based on the information that was provided to children during their TV viewing time. The results were astounding. Instead of commercials providing a pyramid, they provided blocks stacked on top of each other. The first block, which was the largest, had fats and sugars as the most promoted thing. This directly conflicts with the smallest tier of the real food pyramid that says to consume fats and sugars sparingly. So the real problem of obesity is not that your children aren't getting enough physical activity, but that the commercials are pulling the children away toward unhealthy food choices. One of the largest health problems that too much screen time can lead to is the irritability level of a child. When children are exposed to long amounts of screen time in early childhood, their clocks run on the time of the screen instead of the normal pace real-world time. This can cause the children to become very irritable when something does not happen right away the way they want it to. For instance, simple everyday things like waiting for their turn, waiting to use a toy, or even waiting at all can be hard for them when they are so used to getting instant satisfaction. At a young age, the stimuli in their brains can be easily swayed by excessive amounts of fast-paced pictures on a screen. Not only is the patience of your child in danger from excessive amounts of screen time, but so is his focus and concentration. Long, hard thought processes are developed in children at young ages, and if their little brains are not willing to think about things for more than a couple of seconds, then those thought processes will not be developed. As we've reviewed the facts of the case, one conclusion remains. There is a lot more research that can be done about screen time for young children. As a parent, if you would like to further your research on what screens are doing to your children, I highly recommend reading the book Into the Minds of Babes by Lisa Guernsey. This book gives great evidence for what is and is not true about screen time for children. It would also be a good idea to do research on what screens and social media can do to older children, like teenagers, for example. It is imperative that as parents, you remember that the early stages are critical. Your child's relationships can only be fully developed through social interactions. Your child will learn the most from you, the parent, and finally, to keep your child healthy, you must keep them off of screens. If they are allowed screen time, have them use it in a way that will benefit them. For example, they can use it for things like video chatting with grandma and grandpa in order to build up that long-distance relationship. It would also be beneficial for them to watch something with you, like documentaries about God's beautiful creation. That way, you can talk about it with them afterwards to make sure they are provided with a full testament of our Creator. Parents, keep in mind, screen time will always impact your child. To what degree rests in your hands. Thank you.
Excellent job, Maya. Thank you very much. Your guideline of 1 hour a day or 7 hours a week, I got that right?
Yes.
Okay. That pertains to children 0 to 5.
Yes.
Okay. What would your recommendation be after your research, say for a child who is 12, 14 years old?
12 to 14-year-olds. I think that the older they get, they're able to stick with the AAP's recommendation of 2 hours a day, so that would be 14 hours a week, just simply because their early developmental stage has passed. So I don't think it would be as harmful to them to be spending 2 hours versus just 1.
Do you, after the research you've done, do you find yourself noticing how often you yourself are in front of a screen? Because you're in front of a screen right now,
Right.
obviously. Do you find yourself noticing how many various and assorted screen types there are in our daily life?
Definitely. I mean, you go to McDonald's down the street and you can order on the screen. I mean, they're everywhere. And so I know that it can be pretty difficult to keep your children away from them, but the 0 to 5 parents have more control over what they see as a young child. Sorry. But yes, I have found myself noticing, especially during this time of having to learn online at home, how much time I spend. And it is kind of scary to think how much time I'm spending just looking at a screen versus being outside or doing any sort of hanging out with my family. It's kind of shocking to see how a large amount of time that is that I spend on the screen.
Excellent.
Great job, Maya. Excellent work. I think this is a very popular topic right now. So when I talk to parents as an educator and an administrator, a lot of parents are concerned that their kids won't develop certain skills, like for perhaps like technology field or something like that, if they're not, kind of on a computer for a certain period of time and learning different concepts and things like that. What are your thoughts on that? What would you tell a parent who has those concerns?
A parent of an older child or a parent of a child?
Yeah, a parent of a child that, we'll say older, that's, wants to make sure that their child is prepared for life, right? And so they need a certain amount of technology skill and development And for example, right, being here at Annapolis at a classical Christian school, we don't overly emphasize technology. So, you know, but yet, you know, I guess from a student's vantage point, do you feel like that's limited you maybe, or do you feel like there's certain skills, technologically speaking, that you haven't been equipped with to be successful in life?
No, not necessarily. I do remember when we were in junior high, we began to work with our computers a little bit more. We had like a little typing segment in our literature class. So I do think that that really helped us, especially now that we type so much out during this COVID outbreak. But I don't think that I am far behind the curve or behind it at all, really, due to Annapolis's limit on technology.
Thank you.
Maya, there's an article that was published by JSTOR in the daily, and JSTOR is like a repository of academic journals, but sometimes they'll have things posted just to their digest. And on Mother's Day, they had an article posted saying that the only reason people criticize mothers, or the only reason people criticize children having screens, is because they want to criticize mothers because of an anti-female bias. So could you speak to how perhaps maybe you have an anti-woman bias? No, but I'm just kidding. But could you speak to that? Isn't it true that criticizing children using screens is just another way of saying that moms aren't allowed to have it easy?
I would say no. I would say that I know that it is really hard for mothers, especially stay-at-home moms who are with their children 24/7. I mean, that's a lot of being around a toddler per se for that amount of time. And so, but no, I don't think that this argument is an anti-feminist movement, because that hour, or if they're older, that 2 hours can be used for mothers to say sort of relax versus, or sort of relax by taking a shower, maybe going for a walk if the other parent is home, or maybe perhaps cooking dinner just when it's peace and quiet and their child is watching a TV show.
Okay. Well, the article goes on though and says, what about in public? And the author says, when we glare at mothers who allow their kids to have screen time in public, we aren't really shaming them for using technology. We're shaming them for something worse, for women who are daring to be seen.
Daring to be seen.
Yeah, so do you think that maybe taking phones and tablets away from children, wouldn't that be, according to Alexandra Samuel, isn't that just a way of trying to make women stay at home?
No.
Instead of go to work or not be at home?
No, I don't think so. I think that nowadays people do use screens such as tablets or phones to silence their children while they're out in public. But I don't think that is, I mean, I would not recommend that, because I think you're rewarding bad behavior if too much noise. So, and actually I used this article that you're talking about in my reportatio. So screens were not invented to give mothers a break. So I think seeing that, trying to say that that is what they were invented for is a misstep on their part.
Okay.
Maya, have you, in your research, because there is a certain amount of screen time that we would allow, right? Like you mentioned, 7 hours a week or less. Have you ran across any protective, for parents that are just concerned? I know I was having this conversation with Ace just this morning. He was talking about he was going to Google something, right, to find an answer. And that as a parent, that kind of terrifies me, like, what if he has a mistype or something and something, so is there anything that you would recommend for safety, for security, or anything in your research that you ran across to kind of protect young eyes and from some of the stuff that's out there on the internet and screens?
issue or something scary for parents to think about. So I would recommend, especially for someone ACE's age, to maybe have a parent monitor them while they're using the screen. If they're using it to search up things like something on Google, just simply because the internet is kind of a scary place if you think about it, and especially for young eyes. So I think having a parent nearby, or maybe having them type it in instead, would be beneficial. Also, I do think that on certain browsing sites and certain cable networks, you can set parent restrictions as to what they can search up. So I recommend that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Great job, Maya.
Excellent.
All right, thank you, Maya. That concludes